Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about an initial concept that we should know when we are preparing for the mobile system design interview. As an app developer, you should know what is retry mechanism, and in retry mechanism we should know the exponential backoff technique. That is an crucial technique you guys should know when you are preparing and you are developing apps for your company. So what basically it is, let's say whenever we have an API call hitting to that particular server, in that scenario, if we get a failure, that could be 500 API error or 400 or something else. In that scenario, what we usually do, we again hit that particular API call within no gap. Let's say again, right after we are sending, again then API call, again it is failing, and again we are sending. We are into this particular loop. We are just trying again and again in order to make sure, like, anyhow our API should be successful. So this is wrong. Why? We are overburdening. We are just making the server to hit again and again all the API calls. So here what can happen, we are basically making our server full of requests, so the server is overburdened or we are exploiting our server. Okay, so this is not a good approach, like exploiting the server with n number of requests again and again if the API is failing. So this is not done. So like you are making n number of API calls again and again till you hit the success. As a developer, what you should do? Basically, we have a technique known as exponential retry mechanism or exponential backoff. What happens here is, let's say you made an API call let's for the very first time. For the very first time, you made the API call, and this was your API call which got 500 error something. So you will not make the API call right after once you got that particular error. You will be waiting for time being. Let's say you will wait for first 2 seconds and then you will make the call again. And if you get another time also, second time also you are getting the API failure, then you will not make like another API call right after 2 seconds. Now you will increase your waiting time and you will be waiting for, let's say, after 5 seconds, and then you would be making your API call again after 5 seconds. And let's say if this also fail again for the very third time. So this depends upon your business logic, like what you have your solution as. Like you have to wait for 3 API calls, consecutive API calls to be failed in order to show a user pop-up like failure has occurred, or you will try in the background for the 5 times and then you will show. So let's say if you are showing for the 5 times, so then again you would be waiting for, let's say, an ample number of time, 7 seconds. So now from 0 to 7 seconds you will again wait and then you will make an API call, and then you can later on make an API call after 10 seconds. And right, once all your 5 API calls are being made, then you will be showing the user a pop-up of failure like, hey, please try again. This is the correct time to show the pop-up or the failure. Why? Now because you have wait for 2 seconds, so your timing has been increased, and even after that if you are not getting, then it means, right, okay, now API is failing. You first wait for, you made an API call after 2 seconds, then you made for after 5 seconds, 7 and 10. So basically you waited for 2 plus 5, that gives you 7, 7, 14, and then 10, 24 seconds. Like after 24 seconds also if you are trying and you are not getting the API call after 24 seconds, it means yes, the API is failing and there is some issue. So 24 seconds is a big amount that you are trying. But had it been those particular 5 API calls you were making right after one is failing without any wait time, so in 5 seconds you were making 5 API calls. So that is wrong. This is not a good approach, because as the backend also, backend guys would have also given some security mechanism in their servers, and there could be, like, if you are bombarding or exploiting backend, so there could be a chances of denial of service attack. The backend would make your API calls thinking like it is someone hacker who is trying to dump API calls into the server in order to get the access, or they want to dump the server. In that scenario, you can have DOS and your API calls won't be successful in that case. Giving an actual sufficient gap in API calls, the backend would really know like you are a legitimate user, you are an authentic user, and you can be asked or you can come into the server. We have some API rules also written in the backend. So that is why exponential backoff is an important mechanism in order, like, you are an authentic user, there is no design of service attack. And this also distinguish you between a hacker as well as an authentic, because the hacker might bombard your system with n number of requests without any like rest, like without any gap in the APIs. And you, what are you doing as a user? You are making calls after 1 second, then after 2 seconds, then after 5 seconds. So you have a good gap. So backend can identify this pattern. Okay, from this particular client I'm getting the API calls again and again, but I can see there is a gap between the API calls, and I can authenticate like, okay, yes, we have a contract written, like the API calls are made under these time gaps. But if the hacker is making, he is making again without any particular gap that we have written in the contract, it means like this is a denial of service attack. So this is why exponential backoff is pretty important for us. Exponential backoff tells us about like, it helps us to distinguish between the authentic server as the backend server. We do not exploit the backend, we do not give it overuse, overburden the backend. As well as sometimes there could be a scenario like API call might be failing for a certain number of times, and the system might restart, the backend might restart the servers, and again the fourth time it might come back and give us the response. So we had a 24 hours, 20 seconds, 24 seconds of time duration. Maybe within 14 seconds the backend again restored itself. Maybe that particular database was not responding. The backend converted to horizontal scaling and made another database, and from there, after 14 seconds, we get it the response at the 15 second. There could be a scenario. In those scenarios, it is better to give some good number of duration between the API calls. That is why exponential backoff is an important technique you should keep in mind when you are looking for retry mechanisms in your system. So this helps you for a better approach. So whenever you are discussing next time in your mobile system design interview, then do talk about the retry mechanism and the exponential backoff. Thank you.